I never thought the crack of my father's belt against the kitchen table would be the last sound of home I'd hear for years. "You're no son of mine," he spat. His face twisted like I just confessed a murder instead of whispering my truth to my best friend over the phone. At 14, in that stuffy clapboard house in small-town Ohio, I learned love could curdle into hate faster than milk left out in the summer sun. That night, under a sky bruised purple with storm clouds, I grabbed my backpack, stuffed with a couple comic books, my Walkman, and the $20 I'd saved from mowing lawns, and bolted into the dark. The screen door slammed behind me like a gunshot, and I didn't look back. Not then. Not for a long time. The first few weeks blurred into a nightmare of bus benches and church basements, where I'd curl up pretending to pray while the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets overhead. Reverend Hayes from a Methodist church down the street had found me shivering outside the parish hall, my jeans soaked from a late spring rain that felt like God's own judgment. "Boy, you look like you've seen the devil himself," he'd said, his voice gravelly from too many sermons on fire and brimstone. I mumbled something about runaway troubles, but he saw right through it, the hollow eyes, the way I flinched at loud voices. He let me crash in a youth room for a bit, fed me canned soup and grilled cheese that tasted like cardboard mercy. But even saints have limits. And when his wife started whispering about that kind of boy after overhearing me hum along to George Michael's Faith on my tape deck, it was time to move on. I hitched east toward Columbus, thumb out on Route 23, heart pounding every time a trucker slowed down. One guy, a burly fella with a Confederate flag sticker on his dash, leered too long before dropping me at a truck stop with a coffee smelled like regret. There, I met Tommy, a 17-year-old drifter with tattoos snaking up his arms like bad decisions. He was gay too, or at least, that's what his furtive glances and shared Marlboros suggested. We pooled our cash for a Greyhound ticket to Pittsburgh, where the steel mills loomed like rusted giants, and the air hung heavy with the promise of anonymity. Pittsburgh was a grind. We squatted in an abandoned warehouse by the Allegheny River, dodging cops and rival kids who thought we were easy marks. Tommy taught me how to panhandle without begging, smile just right, spin a tale about a sick mom back home, and we'd split the take for hot dog from street vendors. Nights were the worst, though, when the wind whistled through the cracks and Tommy's hands would wander, testing boundaries I wasn't ready to cross. "Come on, Alex," he'd murmur, his breath hot against my neck. "We're all we've got." I'd pull away, mumbling about being too tired, but guilt gnawed at me like termites in old wood. Was I leading him on? Was this what being gay meant? Survival laced with compromise? One freezing February dawn, after a fight over a stolen jacket that ended with Tommy's fist in my ribs, I woke up alone. My backpack was lighter, minus the Walkman and half our cash, and a note scrawled on a gum wrapper. "Sorry, kid. This life's too hard for two." I sat there on the cold concrete, tears freezing on my cheeks, wondering if my dad had been right, if I was broken, unworthy of sticking around for. That betrayal cut deeper than the belt marks I'd hidden under long sleeves. It was my first lesson in how love, even the scrappy kind, could vanish like smoke from chimney. By spring, I clawed my way to Philadelphia, sleeping on park benches in Rittenhouse Square until a women's shelter took pity and snuck me into their overflow. That's where I met Mrs. Delgado, a no-nonsense Latina grandma who ran the intake desk like a drill sergeant. "Mijo, you got fire in those eyes," she said, handing me a cot and a job washing dishes at the shelter's soup kitchen. She didn't pry, but she saw the scars, the emotional ones, anyway, and started slipping me books from the donation bin, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Catcher in the Rye. "Read these," she'd say. "They'll teach you the world's not all monsters." Under her wing, I enrolled in night school at a community center, faking transcripts with a story about foster care glitches. Math was my enemy, but English? That was my armor. I wrote essays about invisible boys, about families that shattered like cheap glass, and the teachers nodded like they got it, even if their smiles were laced with that Midwestern pity. By 16, I had a GED and a part-time gig at a bookstore in Center City, stacking shelves amid the scent of fresh ink and forgotten dreams. It was there, amid the dog-eared copies of Whitman and Baldwin, that I started to breathe again. But the hole Dad left, it festered, a secret shame I've buried under layers of sarcasm and solitude. I avoided mirrors, not because I hated my reflection, skinny kid with messy brown hair and eyes too old for my face, but because they reminded me of him. William Hargrove, the man who'd raised me on baseball games and backyard barbecues, only to disown me for a kiss I never even landed. He'd been a high school football coach, all broad shoulders and booming laughs, the kind of dad every kid in Elmwood envied. Mom died when I was 8, cancer, quick and cruel, and after that, it was just us against the world. Or so I thought. Until that phone call to my friend Jamie, overheard through the thin walls of our double-wide. I think I like boys, I confessed, voice cracking. Next thing I knew, the belt was out, and my world ended. Years ticked by in Philly like pages in a war novel. I dated sporadically, awkward coffee meetups that fizzled when the guys, since my walls were reinforced concrete. There was Mark, the barista with a lip ring and a laugh like summer thunder. But he ghosted after I froze during our first real kiss. Dad's voice echoing in my head, abomination. Then came Derek, a law student who talked big about acceptance, but bailed when my panic attacks hit during family holiday movies. You're too much baggage. Alex, he said over text. And I laughed it off, but it stung like salt in a fresh cut. It was 2015, Obama's second term winding down, when the world started shifting under my feet. Marriage equality hit the headlines. Rainbows flooding social media like a pride parade in pixel form. I watched from my tiny studio apartment above the bookstore, a place with peeling wallpaper and a view of the Schuylkill River that looked romantic until the trash barges floated by. Part of me celebrated. The history books would remember this as progress. But another part, the 14-year-old still hitchhiking in my soul, whispered, "Too late for you." That's when William crashed into my life. Not my dad, God. No, but another William. This one with sun-kissed blonde hair and a southern drawl that wrapped around you like Spanish moss. He wandered into the bookstore one rainy Tuesday, shaking water from his jacket like a golden retriever, asking for Kerouacs on the road. "Trying to find my way," he said, flashing a grin that lit up the dim aisles. I rang him up, fumbling the change, and he lingered, chatting about beatniks and backroads. Turned out he was a photographer from Charleston, in Philly for a gallery show on Urban Decay. Ironic, given how he made my guarded heart feel like it was crumbling. We grabbed coffee after his exhibit, him raving about light leaks and silver halides, me nodding along, mesmerized by how his hands gestured like they were framing the world just for me. William, call me Will, was 25, 5 years my senior, with a backstory that mirrored mine in jagged pieces, conservative family, a brother who'd come out and been fixed at one of those conversion camps. They broke him, Will said over steaming mugs at a corner cafe, his voice dropping low. But they couldn't break me. I ran at 18, camera in hand, chasing truths they couldn't touch. Our first real date was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, climbing those iconic steps like Rocky, laughing until we gasped. At the top, sweaty and triumphant, he pulled me into a hug that lingered too long to be friendly. "You're beautiful when you fight for something," he murmured, and I melted, right there under the gray sky. For the first time, kissing didn't feel like surrender. It felt like coming home. Will's lips were soft, tasting of mint and possibility. And when his fingers threaded through my hair, I let myself believe in second chances. But love's a tricky beast, especially when you've been kicked by it before. Will moved into my apartment after 3 months, his camera gear cluttering the floor like artistic landmines. We built a rhythm, mornings tangled in sheets, him snapping candid shots of me brewing coffee, evenings on the fire escape, sharing dreams over cheap wine. He talked about exhibiting in New York, me about going back to school for creative writing. We'll make it, Alex, he'd say, tracing patterns on my back. 2 survivors against the tide, yet cracks formed, subtle as hairline fractures in glass. Will's phone buzzed late nights with texts he dismissed as gallery stuff, and I'd catch him staring out the window, jaw tight, like ghosts from Charleston were knocking. I had my own secrets. Of course, the letters I'd never sent Dad. The nightmares where he dragged me back to that kitchen, belt in hand. One night, after a fight over my refusal to meet his family, their toxic, babe, I confessed fragments, the expulsion, the streets, Tommy's betrayal. Will held me through the sobs, whispering, "You're stronger than they know." But in his eyes, I saw pity flicker, and it twisted like a knife. Summer brought heat waves and tension. Will's big break came, a solo show in Brooklyn, and he asked me to come, to be his muse. I wanted to. God, I did. But the thought of New York, of bridges and anonymity, stirred old fears. What if I'm not enough? I blurted one humid evening, sweat beating on our skin as we argued in the living room. He paced, camera slung around his neck like a noose. Alex, you're everything. But you gotta let me in all the way. That's when he dropped the bomb. His ex, a guy named Ethan, had shown up at the gallery, drunk and desperate, spilling about their unfinished business. Will swore it was nothing, a one-night regret from college, but the photos on his phone, blurry timestamps from last month, said otherwise. Betrayal hit like a sucker punch. How could you? I yelled, hurling his lens cap across the room. It shattered against the wall, shards glinting like my trust. Will reached for me, eyes pleading. It was a mistake. Alex. One night when you were pulling away. I love you. But the words rang hollow, echoing Tommy's gum wrapper goodbye. I stormed out, wandering Fairmount Park until dawn, rain mixing with tears. Was this the gay life? A cycle of abandonments, where love was just another road to run down. Days blurred into a haze. Will begged forgiveness via voicemails, poetic apologies about light and shadow, but I ghosted him, burying myself in shifts at the bookstore. Mrs. Delgado noticed, of course, sliding me extra empanadas and sage advice. Me, Joe, hearts heal crooked sometimes, but they heal. She was right, in a way. The pain sharpened me, forced me to face the mirror. At 24, I wasn't that scared kid anymore. I was Alexander Hargrove, survivor, storyteller. It was time to go home. The decision crystallized one crisp October morning, leaves crunching underfoot as I walked to the Greyhound station. Will had left a final letter under my door. I see you, Alex. All of you. Come find me when you're ready. I folded it into my wallet, a talisman against the miles ahead. Elmwood, Ohio. Hadn't changed. Same faded billboard for John Deere. Same one stoplight, Main Street, where gossip traveled faster than the Amtrak. But I had. Backpack heavier now, with a laptop and published short stories. I stepped off the bus feeling like an invader in my own history. Dad's house, William Hargrove's house, squatted at the edge of town, paint peeling like old skin. The truck in the drive was newer. A Ford F-150 with coaching stickers still on the bumper. Heart hammering I knocked, half expecting silence. Instead, the door creaked open, and there he was, grayer, lines etched deeper around his eyes, but the same broad frame that once tossed footballs with effortless grace. Alex, his voice cracked, a whisper of whiskey and wonder. For a beat, we stood frozen, the air thick with unspoken indictments. Then he stepped aside. Come in, son. The kitchen smelled of Folgers and regret. We sat at the table, the same one scarred from that belt, him nursing black coffee, me clutching a mug like a shield. I figured you'd hate me forever, he started, voice rough. Turns out, the years hadn't been kind to him either. After I left, the town whispered, the team suffered, and a heart attack at 48 forced early retirement. Lost my fire, Alex. And you. God, I was wrong. Scared. Your ma. She would've. He trailed off, eyes glistening. I wanted to rage, to unload the streets, the betrayals, the nights I'd cried myself raw. But seeing him, frail now, human, I felt a crack in my armor. You threw me away, Dad. Like trash. The words hung, heavy as humidity. He nodded, tears carving tracks down weathered cheeks. I know. And I've paid for it every day. That's when the real story spilled. Not just mine, but his. Turns out, Grandpa Hargrove had been the family bigot, beating this sissy out of young William with Bible verses and fists. Dad had internalized it, passed it down like a cursed heirloom. But in the void after my leaving, therapy, mandated after the heart scare, and a support group for parents of LGBTQ kids had cracked him open. I wrote letters he admitted, pulling a shoebox from a pantry, yellowed envelopes addressed to me. Burned most. Kept these, hoping. One fell open, son. If you're out there, know I see you now. Proud, my throat tightened, fury warring with forgiveness. How dare he claim pride after the pain? Yet, in his trembling hands, I saw the boy he'd been, terrified, trapped. We talked for hours, raw and ragged, unearthing bones I'd thought buried. By dusk, as cicadas hummed outside, something shifted. Not absolution, but a bridge. Stay, he said. Rebuild. I didn't, not yet. But I visited weekly, chipping at the ice. Will called during one drive back to Philly, his voice tentative over speakerphone. Heard you went home. Brave. Alex. We met in a Delaware diner halfway. Him with fresh prints from his show. Me with Dad's letters. Over greasy fries. I confessed the weekend, the rage, the reconciliation's fragile thread. Will listened. No defensiveness. Just that steady gaze. I messed up, he said finally. Ethan was a ghost. You're mine now. Forgiveness isn't linear. It's a spiral, dipping into dark and rising uneven. We tried again, slower, with boundaries like velvet ropes. Therapy for both, mine unpacking the abandonment, his the family scars. Will's photos started featuring us, candid frames of tangled hands, silhouettes against city lights. And Dad, he came to Philly for Pride that June, awkward in a rainbow pin I'd pinned on his collar, cheering louder than anyone when the floats rolled by. But life doesn't tie bows neatly. The high came crashing in November, when Dad's cancer diagnosis hit, prostate, aggressive, the kind that laughs at early detection. Like your ma, he joked weekly from his hospital bed in Columbus, but his eyes begged for more time. I shuttled between worlds, Will's Brooklyn loft, fragrant with darkroom chemicals, and Elmwood's sterile halls, where monitors beeped like accusatory metronomes. Will came too. Camera retired, just holding space, fetching bad coffee, reading Dad passages from my latest story collection. The inn was quiet, snow blanketing the Ohio fields like a shroud. Dad passed in my arms, whispering, stronger than me. Son, always were. Grief hollow me. But Will's hand in mine anchored the storm. At the funeral, townsfolk who'd shunned me back then offered condolences. Their hypocrisy a bitter pill. But one, a former teammate, slipped me a note. Coach changed after you left. Said he was proud, back in Philly, as spring thawed the Schuylkill. Will and I stood on that same fire escape. City lights twinkling like hesitant stars. What now? He asked, breath fogging the air. I leaned into him, the weight of years lighter somehow. We keep going. Stronger. And we did. I published my memoir, Veiled Names, but the truth raw as Ohio clay, and it hit lists, sparking talks on forgiveness and family. Will's exhibit, Shadows of Return, sold out. Images of fractured homes mending in soft focus. Dad's letters, framed in our apartment. Reminders that love, once kicked away, can circle back transformed. Years later, at 30, I trace the scars, physical and otherwise, and smile. The boy who ran into the night, he's still in me, but so is the man who returned. Not unbroken, but bolder. And in Will's arms, under a sky finally clear. I know, we're all just trying to find our way home. The drive back to Philly after that first visit to Elmwood felt like exhaling after holding my breath for a decade. Route 70 stretched out like a vein pumping me toward the city. Radio crackling with some classic rock station crooning Springsteen's Thunder Road. Ironic, given the thunder still rumbling in my chest. Dad's face haunted the rear view, not the monster I'd mythologized, but a man eroded by time, his apologies hanging in the air like smoke from a dying fire. I pulled over at a rest stop near Zanesville, hands shaking as I dialed Will. I did it, I said when he picked up, voice barely above the hum of semis. I saw him. His response was pure Will, warm, unflinching. Tell me everything. Babe, I'm grabbing takeout. We'll dissect it over Lo Mein. By the time I hit the Schuylkill Expressway, horns blaring in the rush hour snarl, the knot in my gut had loosened just a fraction. Our apartment waited like a sanctuary, Will's latest prints drying on the clothesline in the living room, the scent of garlic and ginger wafting from the kitchen. He enveloped me in a hug that smelled of developer fluid and home, steering me to the couch with a beer in hand. Spill. So I did. The awkward knock, the coffee, the shoebox of unsent letters. Will listened, legs tucked under him, nodding at the right beats, fury when I described Dad's initial denial, softness when I admitted the flicker of pity I'd felt. It's not forgiveness yet, I warned, twisting the bottle label to shreds. More like reconnaissance. He squeezed my knee, eyes steady as a shutter click. That's progress. Alex. Real kind. Not the Hallmark crap. Sleep came fitful that night. Dreams splicing Dad's kitchen with Philly alleys. Belts morphing into camera straps. But morning brought routine. Well, off to a freelance gig, shooting a wedding. He hated them, but paid the bills. Me to the bookstore, with a bell above the door, chimed like a benediction. Customers trickled in, commuters grabbing thrillers, grad students hunting Foucault, and for once, the stack of unsold memoirs didn't mock me. I even recommended one to a wide-eyed teen browsing the LGBTQ shelf. This one's raw. Might sting, but it'll stick. Weeks turned to months. Those weekly drives to Elmwood etching grooves in my life like tire tracks in mud. Dad and I fell into a tentative dance. Him cooking meatloaf that tasted of childhood ghosts. Me sharing snippets of city life, pride floats. Will's exhibits. He'd grill gently about that photographer fella, a blush creeping up his neck when I called Will my partner. Good man, he'd grunt approval, passing the mashed potatoes. Treats you right. Once, After his second beer, he confessed more, how he'd stalked my sparse social media, God. The embarrassment. See my byline in a local lit mag. Proud. Son. Damn proud. But pride's a fragile bloom. Easily trampled. Holiday season loomed like a freight train. Thanksgiving with Will's eccentric aunt in Jersey. She baked pies and asked 0 questions, clashing against Elmwood's empty table. I invited Dad to Philly, half joking about turkey intolerance. He hemmed, hot about small-town talk, but showed stiff in khakis, clutching a store-bought pie like a peace offering. Will played host flawlessly, drawing him into stories of Southern Thanksgivings with gator hunts and gumbo. By dessert, Dad was chuckling at Will's tale of photographing a drag brunch gone wrong, pie crust crumbling in his fist. Times change, he muttered later, clapping my shoulder on the stoop. You changed me. If only change were linear. December brought blizzards and buried secrets. Will's phone buzzed more, text from Ethan. He'd sworn off, but curiosity gnawed. One night, post-holiday party at the bookstore, eggnog, and awkward carols. I scrolled his messages while he showered. There was, miss you. One drink, for old times. Heart slamming. I confronted him in a towel, steam curling like accusations. What the hell? Will? He deflated, water dripping from curls. It's nothing, Alex. He's reaching out because he heard about the show. Jealousy. Not love, but the timestamps lied. A bar tab from last week, when I'd been in Ohio. It was coffee, he amended, voice small. And yeah, a drink. But I left. Swear. Rage boiled, Tommy's echo. Dad's abandonment amplified. You think I'm some fragile kid you can half-ass this with? I roared, storming to the spare room, his dark room. Now our guest space. Door slammed. Lock clicked. Silence thicker than the snow outside. He slept on the couch. I tossed in the chemical-scented bed, replaying every touch, every promise. Betrayal wasn't just the act. It was the doubt it planted. Weeds choking the garden weed tilled. Morning brought truce, coffee, tears, truths. I panicked, Will admitted, hands raw from wringing. Ethan represents the easy out, the guy who didn't make me face my family's mess. But you make me want to fight. We couples counseled via Zoom with a therapist specializing in queer trauma, sessions peeling layers like onion skins. It hurt, but healing always does. January thawed us, but Elmwood called louder. Dad's cough started subtle, a hack after chopping wood for the fireplace, but escalated to doctor's visits he'd downplayed. Just a cold, he'd wave off, but his eyes held shadows. I pushed for tests, driving him myself to the clinic in Dayton. Waiting room small talk about Buckeye football masked the fear gnawing my ribs. Results came post-Super Bowl. Abnormal cells. Biopsy recommended. Early the doc said, but the word cancer landed like a fumble in the end zone. Will rallied, canceling shoots to road trip with me. His camera capturing not glamour, but grit. Dad in flannel, grinning weakly at a diner milkshake. You're both lighthouses, Will told me one night in a motel off I-70. Neon buzzing outside, guiding each other through the fog. We laughed at the cheese, but it stuck. Dad took to treatment like a trooper. Chemo in Columbus. Radiation zaps that left him queasy but quotable. Beats coaching losing seasons. Spring bloomed defiant. Dogwoods and Elmwood mirroring the tentative green in our lives. Will and I recommitted. No half measures with a weekend in the Pockenees. Cabin by a lake where loons called like lost souls. There, under star-pricked skies, we made promises, therapy monthly, honesty hourly. His photos from that trip, me skipping stones, ripples widening, hung in our hall, talismans against relapse. But fate's a fickle quarterback. May's checkup brought bad huddles. Meds to the lymph nodes. Stage 3. Dad's bravado cracked. Mine followed. What if I lose him again? I whispered to Will in the parking lot. Rain sheeting the windshield. He pulled me close. Heartbeat syncing with the wipers. You won't. Not this time. We're in it. Alex, full contact. The summer scorched. Chemo cycles, a brutal playbook. I quit the bookstore for freelance editing. Holing up in Elmwood's guest room to write. Dad's stories fueling my manuscript. A novel weaving expulsion and return. Will shuttle gear and groceries. His southern charm coaxing smiles from nurses. One afternoon, post-infusion fog, Dad pulled us both to the porch swing, creaking under our weight. Boys, he rasped, hand on my knee, then Will's. Thank you for giving this old coach a second half. Tears came unbidden. The three of us linked in a chain of grace. It wasn't erasure. The pain lingered, a scar tissue reminder, but it was enough. Enough for now. As leaves turned, so did the tide. Dad rallied through fall, strong enough for a Buckeye game tailgate. Scarf against the chill. We'll snap candids, us in scarlet jerseys. Foam fingers aloft. Dad's laugh booming faint but fierce. This is living, he toasted with hot cider, eyes bright. But November winds whispered warnings. A scan showed spread, lungs now, and palliative care entered the lexicon. Hospice in Elmwood, home where it started. I read to him from my drafts, while projecting slides of Philly sunsets on the bedroom wall. Beautiful, Dad murmured, hand squeezing mine. Like you, son. The end came swift, a Monday morning hush. I held him as monitors flatlined, Will's arm around my shoulders, his quiet sobs mirroring mine. He fought good, Will said later, folding Dad's flannel. Funeral was packed, old teammates, townsfolk with regrets in their eyes. I spoke. He taught me strength isn't in silence. It's in saying sorry and meaning it. Grief's a marathon, not a sprint. Back in Philly, snow dusting the fire escape, Will and I rebuilt brick by brick. My book sold, modest advance, but validation, and Will's gallery in Chelsea beckoned. We planned a trip south, to Charleston, facing his ghosts head-on. One dawn, Lakeview from our bed, Will traces my jaw. Stronger together? I nod, kissing his palm. Always. Winter in Philly wrapped us in a cocoon of quiet survival. The kind that follows a storm, branches snapped, but roots intact. Will's Brooklyn show loomed like a beacon. Echoes of exile, a series on displaced souls, faded porches in the south, rain-slicked alleys in the north, all laced with themes of return. He'd pace our apartment at odd hours, adjusting prints under the red safe light, muttering about contrast and catharsis. This one's you, he'd say, pinning a shot of a lone figure on a bridge. Back to the camera, city lights blurring into hope. I'd watch, coffee cooling in my mug, marveling at how he captured the invisible, the ache of what-ifs, the glow of what comes next. My own work stuttered post-funeral. The novel, tentatively titled Backroad Benedictions, sat half-finished on my laptop, chapters frozen in Dad's final days. Grief blocked the keys like ice on the Schuylkill, but will coax me out, walks in Rittenhouse, where dog walkers nodded hellos, open mics at dive bars, where I'd read fragments to nodding strangers. Your voice carries, a barista told me after one. Slipping her number, I politely declined. We just grinned, possessive hand on my waist. Damn right it does. January thawed secrets too. Sorting Dad's attic, boxes of yellowed playbooks and Mom's jewelry, I found letters not just to me, but from me. Wait, no, photocopies of emails I'd sent to a PO. Box years ago, postmarked but undelivered. Ow! I gasped to Will over the phone from Elmwood. Paper crinkling. Turns out, Dad had a confidant, a cousin in Cleveland, who forwarded them. Anonymous lifelines he'd clutched like contraband. 1. From my Pittsburgh squat days. I hate you, but I miss the pancakes. His reply, scribbled in margins. Pancakes wait. Son. Always. It humanized him further. That flawed guardian who'd armored his heart with hate to shield his own wounds. Will, hearing the tale on my return, pulled me to the couch. See? He was reaching. Even then, we made love that night, slow, reverent. No rush, bodies mapping forgiveness in size and skin. Afterward, tangled in sheets, he whispered, "Your strength? It's contagious." I laughed. Tracing his tattoo, a compass rose on his ribcage. Says the guy who photographs pain for a living. His show opened Valentine's weekend. Chelsea Gallery humming with critics in black turtlenecks and collectors with checkbooks. I stood in the corner, suit ill-fitting, heart swelling as we'll work the room, drawl disarming. Passion electric. A reviewer from the Village Voice cornered me. Your influence is evident. These aren't just images, they're confessions. Flushed. I nodded, spotting Ethan across the floor, tall, brooding, nursing a scotch. Our eyes met. He nodded curt, then vanished into the crowd. Will caught my attention later, over champagne flutes. Ignore him. Tonight's ours, but Ethan's shadow lingered. Post-show buzz. We crashed at Will's sister's loft, a whirlwind artist with a loft cat named Frida, and I woke to text on his phone. Screen aglow. Proud of you. Coffee tomorrow? Paranoia spiked. I slipped out for a walk. Manhattan's pre-dawn chill biting. Was history rhyming? Another man orbiting my orbit, pulling Will toward easier gravity? Back at the loft, Will stirred, bleary-eyed. Babe, what's wrong? Confession tumbled, the texts, the fear. He groaned, rubbing temples. Ethan's persistent. Yeah, but irrelevant. Let me block him, done. It was a Band-Aid, but we stuck. Therapy helped unpack it. My abandonment schema, his guilt from the affair. Trust rebuilds in increments, our counselor said, a no BS dyke with a buzz cut and Brooklyn accent. We committed weekly check-ins, no phone zones during intimacy. By March, as Forsythia bloomed in the window boxes, we felt solid, stronger, even for the fractures. Elmwood pulled me back for estate loose ends, selling the house. A bittersweet ledger of repairs and realtor fees. The place sold quick to a young couple with a toddler, full of renovation dreams. Walking the empty rooms one last time, echoes of baseball gloves slapping and mom's laughter fading. I pocketed a sliver of porch wood, scarred from Dad's boot. Will met me there, drive from Philly, arms laden with sub-sandwiches. To new chapters he toasted on the swing, creak familiar. I leaned into him, lake visible through budding trees, the same dock from my image, prompt memory, dawn light gilding the water. This was it, I murmured. The romantic heart of us. He kissed my temple, camera clicking soft. Knew at the moment I saw you there. Spring unfurled into opportunity. My agent, a sharp Jewish woman from Flatbush, landed me a reading at Strand Bookstore. Manhattan's Mecca. Nerves jangled like subway rails as I stepped to the mic. Crowd a sea of faces, queer kids with rainbow pins, elders with knowing nods. I read the expulsion scene, raw, unvarnished, and the room hushed, then erupted in snaps and claps. Afterward, a line formed for signatures. One teen, barely 16, hugged me tight. Thank you. My dad's. Like that. But maybe not forever. Will, in the wings, wiped discreet tears. You changed him tonight. The high carried us to Charleston, Will's prodigal return. camera as shield. His family estate loomed on the battery, antebellum grace masking ugly histories. Aunt Clara greeted us coolly. Magnolia-scented hug for Will. A praising glance for me. The partner, she drawled. Silver hair piled high. Dinner was a minefield. Uncle Ted's passive barbs about lifestyles, Cousin Becca's allyship awkward as ill-fitting heels. Will tensed, fork scraping china. But I squeezed his thigh under the table. You turn a lean. Babe. Post-meal escape to the garden. Palmetto, Franz whispering. He broke. This place. It chokes me. Stories poured. Teen years hiding crushes in darkrooms. The brothers shipped to camp. Emerging shattered. I left to survive. Coming back. For closure. I held him as cicadas chorused. Moonlight silvering tears. You're not alone, I said. Not anymore. The visit cracked him open, but mended too. A bonfire the next night. Family tradition, saw Will burn old photos. Flames devouring boyhood masks. Aunt Clara watched, softening. He was always the sensitive one, she confided later, pressing a locket into my palm. Mom's? No. Will's grandmother. A suffragette queer in code. Keep him fierce. Northbound train. Will slept on my shoulder. Charleston fading. Thank you, he murmured awake. For holding space. I kissed his hair. Ditto. We're mirrors now, reflecting each other's brave. Summer simmered with momentum. My book deal finalized. Advance enough for a down payment on a brownstone sliver in Fishtown. Will's work exploded. A documentary short on queer Southern diaspora got Sundance buzz. We celebrated on that lakeside dock again. Anniversary getaway. Michigan's up wild and woolly. Dawn found us wrapped in blankets. Coffee steaming. His head on my shoulder. This, he said, gesturing to the mist-shrouded water, is us. Serene, but deep running. Idyllic. Until August gut punch. A letter from Elmwood's lawyer. Dad's will, overlooked in grief, bequest to me, but a codicil, share with the boy who made you strong. Attached, a faded photo, me at 10, gap-toothed grin, Dad's arm slung proud. Note, knew you were special then. Sorry it took dying to say it. Sobs racked me on the kitchen floor, Will cradling. He saw you, Alex, all along. It unlocked the final chapters. I finished the novel in a frenzy, words flowing like released floodgates. Launch party in October, Phillies Union League. Chandeliers dripping light, saw friends. Mrs. Delgado beaming in her best dress. Toasting Mijo's triumph. But triumph's twin is vulnerability. Post-launch high. Ethan resurfaced, email to Will. CC and Jimmy. Congrats. Alex seems great. But remember us. Venom laced the casual. Will forwarded. Furious. Block and report? I nodded. But doubt slithered. Was I enough? The next week. Over tie and passing. I voiced it. What if he tempts you again? Will set down his pad CEW. Eyes fierce. He's chaos. You're calm. End of story. Yet stories twist. November brought Sundance acceptance, while flying solo, me tied to edits. Airport goodbye kiss lingered. 2 weeks, he promised. Days blurred. Revisions. Readings. Hollow bed. Then, the call midnight. His voice slurry. Alex? Fucked up. Ethan's here. Festival after party. I kissed him. Stupid. Drunk. Coming home. World tilted. I hung up. Numb. Pacing the apartment till dawn. Betrayal redux. Familiar sting. Sharper for the healing weed banked. Where he landed. Cab idling outside. I met him on the stoop. Bag packed. Out, I said. Voice steel. Fix your patterns. Alone. He crumpled. Please falling on deaf ears. It's not please. Alex. Growth hurts. Door shut. Lock turned. Alone again. Naturally. The weeks post-Will's eviction stretched like taffy, sticky, unending. Fishtown's brownstones mocked me with their coupled silhouettes and lit windows, while I rattled around our apartment like a ghost in a machine. The darkroom stage shuddered, his prints on the walls accusatory stares. I dove into work, final proofs for backroad benedictions, promo tours snaking through the Midwest, readings in Cleveland, Dayton, ironic homecomings where audiences leaned in, hungry for redemption arcs. Does he forgive? A woman asked post-Q&A in Akron, eyes wet. I paused, mic heavy. Not always. But he tried to find me then. Therapy solo now. Unpacking the loop. Dad's kick. Tommy's theft. Will's stumbles. You're magnetizing mirrors, my counselor posited. Reflecting unresolved to resolve it. Bullshit or breakthrough. Either way, I journaled furiously, pages of rage ink. Then release. Mrs. Delgado visited, bearing flan and frankness. Me, Joe. Love ain't a straight shot. It's potholes and detours. Her hug smelled of lavender and long views. December dusted snow on the Schuylkill bridges. Holidays a gauntlet. Solo Thanksgiving, takeout, Turkey. Netflix numbness, morphed to invitation from Will's sister. Frida misses her uncle. I went, wary, but her loft buzzed warmth. Queer chosen family. Toast to messy miracles. Noel sightings. But his absence echoed. Empty chair at the table. Like Dad's at ours once. New Year ticked in solo. Fireworks over the river, painting solitude silver. Resolutions? Boundaries, not barriers. I texted Will, first contact, happy, 2017. Hope you're healing. Reply swift. Miss you. Therapy's kicking my ass. Gallery gig in LA, space. I typed. Deleted. Sent, space. For now, spring green the city. My book hit shelves April 1st. Fitting. Fool's gold turned real. Launch in Elmwood's library. Of all places, packed house. Former teammates in folding chairs. Reverend Hayes presiding with a progressive benediction. I read the reconciliation scene, voice steady, ending on Dad's porch swing elegy. Applause thundered. Afterward, a cluster of locals, kids mostly, huddled, sharing stories. My uncle's like your dad, one whispered. Was. But he read your book. Call me last week. Seed sown. Perhaps. Will resurfaced in May. Email tentative. Exhibit opening. NYC. If you're free. I was edits done. Tour winding down. Chelsea again. But solo vibes. His resolutions series. Abstracts of fractured glass, mending and light. I lingered at a piece titled Second Exposure. Overlapped negatives. My profile ghosted over his. Knew you'd come, he said behind me. Voice husky. Turned. He looked wrecked, leaner, eyes shadowed, but clear. Coffee after. Neutral ground. A bistro with sidewalk tables blooming geraniums. LA changed me, he started, stirring sugar fidgets. Therapy. AA for the party binges. Ethan's out. Restraining order after stalking the gallery. Regret carve his face. I chased easy because hard scared me. You're the hardest. Best thing. I sipped espresso. Bitter as truth. You broke us. Will. Twice. He nodded. No defense. Earn it back. Slowly. Slow-suited. Coffee became walks. Schuylkill paths. Him respecting space. Me testing fences. Stories swapped. His LA isolation. My Elmwood echoes. One evening. Fire escape perch. City humming below. He handed an envelope. Letters. Like Dad's. Wrote these. Burn if you want. I kept them, unread for weeks. Summer baked the asphalt. Our rhythm rebuilding. Movie nights platonic. His hand brushing mine, accidental on purpose. Sundance short won an award, queer jury prize, and he dedicated it to the mirror who showed me myself. I watched the stream, tears blurring, pride swelling unbidden. Fall leaves turned therapy breakthroughs, joint sessions, excavating the kiss's roots, his abandonment fears from family. Mirroring mine. We're both runners, I admitted one rainy afternoon. Rain pattering windows. Time to stand. He squeezed my hand. Together, November marked a year since the Sundance slip. Anniversary quiet, dinner at that Delaware diner. Fries crisp, stories soft. Forgive me, he asked, vulnerable as exposed film. I paused, heart full. Working on it. But yeah, starting to. Winter sealed it. Christmas in Elmwood, ghost town now. But we strung lights on the old swing, while hammering hooks with boyish zeal. For the next owners, he said. Or us. Someday. Back in Philly. Snow falling fat flakes. We made our way to the bedroom. Not rushed. But right. Bodies remembered. Hearts caught up. Home, he breathed after. And I believed it. 2020 dawned with promise. My book shortlisted for a Lambda. Will's doc streaming on PBS. Pandemic hit like a blindside tackle. Lockdowns. Masks. Fear, but we hunkered. Baking sourdough fails and Zoom toast with Mrs. Delgado. Quarantines our cocoon, Will quipped, snapping us in aprons. Flour dusted and laughing. Emerging. 2021. We bought rings, simple bands. Backyard vows under Michigan oaks. Lake lapping witness. Aunt Clara came. Tearful. Reverend Hayes officiated. Full circle. Vows echoed. I see you, scars and all. Stronger with you. Years layered on. His galleries in L.A. My tenure at a lit nonprofit. Mentoring runaways like Teen Me. Dad's legacy? A scholarship fund in Elmwood. For queer kids chasing dreams. Will's photos grace our walls. That doc embrace. Eternal. At 35, tracing his compass tattoo. I know kicked out, but never down. Returned. Not unbroken, but boundless. And in his arms, under endless skies. That's the real story. Love's long road home.